Ladies and gentlemen, listeners, lovers, friends, family. Sometimes I record these intros after the guest has left, but I'm recording this intro in preparation and anticipation to our guest for episode 13, which you're about to listen to. Today I decided we're not going to do sponsorships today. Which some of you are probably listening going, thank God I don't have to listen to this dude ramble on about, whoever the sponsor is of the show. I do want to say this. I want to thank you guys all for listening to these past 12 episodes and hopefully for listening and loving this episode and sharing it as well. We've had a lot of fun. We've had some mostly light guests on, light fare. We're talking to entertainers and filmmakers and on-air personalities, etc. We've had a lot of fun, a lot of laughs. We've had some serious shows as well. This show, Dave is my uncle. He's married to my aunt. I've known Dave pretty much my entire life. He's a guy that I looked up to as a little kid. First time I was on a motorcycle, I didn't ride the motorcycle, but it was my Uncle Dave's motorcycle. And before him and my aunt were married, I was in their wedding party. I was the ring bearer when they got married. I don't remember how old I was, maybe 4 or 5. This is a guy who has in the past, and we're going to, obviously hear from him. But in knowing several people who have struggled with addiction in the past, it's a daily thing. This guy approaches it with grace and dignity and courage and a lot of grit. He's been sober now for... I don't even know. He's going to tell you. I want to thank him ahead of time. Thank you for listening, and thank him for changing the trajectory of my life for a positive way. And I gave him, in talking about this thing, in coming on the show, I didn't want him to feel obligated to come on because I know he would do it just because he loves me and he's my uncle. But I didn't want him to do it for that, and I didn't want him to put himself into a position where he would embarrass himself or, share things that were too personal or whatever it is. I mean, this is a very personal episode, and it's very personal to me, and obviously it's very personal to him. And so I gave him an out, and I texted him a couple days ago, and I said, hey, listen, I know that if I asked you to do this and I really wanted you to do it, you would do it just for me. But I don't want you to do that. If you don't feel comfortable, if, you don't have to, don't feel like you feel, I don't want you to feel obligated to have to do this. And his text back to me, I'm paraphrasing because I don't have my phone in front of me, but his text back to me was, if this episode helps one person who is struggling with addiction or depression or things in their life that have overcome or consumed them, if it helps one person, it's worth it. And that's part of his process. That's part of, any kind of 12-step recovery process. And I just want to say, I'm super honored that he's coming on. This is take a lot of courage. We had Chris, Higby on the last show, and we had, Frank Castellano, and we've had other guys that, kind of bare their soul for their art. This is a guy that's bearing his soul, honestly and openly. And, it's caused some pain for people, but he has made it through to the other side. So for no other reason, if you're listening to this today and you are struggling with something, I hope and pray that by him sharing his information and his story, it will inspire you to change. Because this is a guy that has changed his life 180 degrees. I'm super proud that he's my uncle. I'm super proud that he's on the show. And I really hope that you guys enjoy this. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Uncle Dave, welcome to the podcast.
How you doing?
He gave that real
Hey,
how you doing? We want to give a disclaimer before we start the show. We of course talk beforehand, and So here's our disclaimer. If you're listening anywhere out there in the universe, it's important that you all know that none of us here on the podcast today are experts or specialists in recovery. We do not represent any particular program, and we are going to try, I'm going to try, we're all going to try to use specific and respectful language when talking about recovery and things of that nature. Did I cover that? None of us are medical specialists.
Yeah. Anything that I may talk about in recovery is pertaining to me. My story is my story. I don't pretend to tell or talk about anybody else. I've never called anybody else or whatever. You know, it's always been my story, and it pertains to me only.
So I've said this in the intro, and I'll reiterate it again. I want to say it now. I'll probably say it afterwards. I want to thank you for coming in, for the courage that you are showing to come and share your story. Yesterday we had Chris Higby on. It was yesterday. We recorded it. People who are listening out there, it was episode 12. And before that, we had Frank Castellano. And we both talked about, those guys are recording artists and musicians, and other guests are too. And we talked about bearing our soul when we go out on stage or when we act or when we whatever, or when we show our art. This is a whole nother level of getting naked. And you had said this before we got out there. So with the most amount of respect and the most amount of gratitude, I want to thank you for coming on again and showing a lot of courage to come on and talk about something that's super personal, but also super important, especially given our state of affairs in the U.S. with the opioid crisis, and especially here in Ohio. Ohio last year, 2017, I don't know if the stats are in for 18 yet, but in 2017, Ohio had the second highest rate of drug overdose deaths involving opioids in the United States, almost 4,300 deaths. And that's a rate of almost 40 deaths per 100,000 people. And the national average is almost 15 deaths. So almost 3 times as many in Ohio. We live here in Trumbull County. Trumbull County has been really a ground zero. We're the second most leading, we have the most deaths, second leading deaths and overdoses in the state of Ohio. And so we talked about it before too. Everyone out there, I'm sure, like us sitting in this room, has had experience indirectly or directly with somebody we know, love, work with. Maybe some of you don't like that much. Maybe it's that guy work that you don't, but everyone has been touched in some way. And so it's important to have this conversation. And so let's have it. How long have you been clean?
I got clean July 22nd, 1997. On July 21st, we were riding in a car, had 2 kids in the back seat. One was 6 and the other one was 8 and one was 2. I have 2 daughters. And I was driving, and my wife was just, she was at wit's end. She was still with me, but she was at wit's end. And she looked at me and said, "My brother can't even stand to look at you anymore." And for some reason, we talk about rock bottoms. That was my rock bottom because, we were very close, family oriented. It hit me that I had nobody fooled. The only person I was fooling was myself. Even the kids in the back seat knew I was a mess. At that time, I'm about 200 right now. At that time, I think I weighed maybe 145 pounds. My face was sunken in. And I looked at my wife and I said, "I just can't stop. I just can't stop. I don't know how to stop. I've tried and tried." So we turned the car around and we went back home, and Jerry made a phone call, and my parents, her parents, and my brother-in-law that said he couldn't even stand to look at me anymore, made a phone call to Arch 11 at that time. It was Hillside Hospital. And it's unheard of now, within 8 or 10 hours, I had a bed, and I was at the rehab. And my clean date then was July 22nd, 1997. And I stayed clean through a 12-step program up until, let's see, roughly September of 2007. I got an injury, and I got some medication. And they said, the doctor said, because I explained to him, I said, I have a problem. I have an addiction problem, whatever it may be, ice cream, candy. I have an addiction problem. I have an addictive personality. And he said, is it narcotics? And I said, yes, that's one of them too. And he said, we have a special drug just for you kind of people. Well, anything and everything that I've ever learned in those 10 years that I stay clean is, first and foremost, you go to meetings, you get a sponsor, you work a 12-step program, and you stay clean. The most important thing is stay clean. And I did it for 9.5 years. Well, the relapse, as you would call it, I thought was the using. You know, I said, I relapsed, I used drugs. Well, the relapse started way before the using. The relapse started when I quit going to meetings, quit calling a sponsor, quit talking to people. That was the relapse. The using was just a symptom of it. So I didn't tell anybody, and I got this medication. And the first thing you're supposed to do is turn it over to somebody that's responsible. That way you can take it as prescribed. Well, within less than 3 months, I was right back where I started. That tiger was inside of me, and I had put it to bed or sleep for almost 10 years. But as soon as I took that non-narcotic that had narcotic symptoms, I was off and running. For 3 months, I stayed stoned. Again,
what were you using? What was the drug of choice at that time?
At that time, I was taking a medication by the name of Ultram, and that was the non-narcotic, but it had narcotic like symptoms or whatever you want to call it. But by the end of my 90 days, I was taking 40 milligrams of methadone, which is like twice the amount of heroin addict. It's a maintenance drug for heroin addicts.
Prescribed or?
No, all off the street.
You're back
I was back on the streets, yeah. And I had gone down again to like 135 pounds. I damn near died. I was in the hospital for 5 days. And this was my second run at the rehab type thing. And I'm jumping around. I'm sure you'll bring me back. But this time, my wife never came to see me in the hospital. Nobody, my mother wouldn't even come to see me in the hospital. Here's my mom, tough old codger from the Depression days, born in 1927. I said, Mom, I need help. I didn't have much. I said, I need help paying for my hospital bill. She said, you got yourself into this mess? You get yourself out of this mess. She had helped me, and my parents were super, and my in-laws were super too. But, that was a tough love thing. And so I got clean December 7th, 2007, and I've been clean ever since. So we're going on 12 years here.
What was the choice at that point? The car ride and the statement and your daughters, and it was in the 90s. In 2007, what was it? What was the... Well,
I was 10 years older, and my body really, in 97... I'm not going to get too graphic, but in 97, I spent 21 days at Hillside Hospital. And for the first 5 days, you detox, whatever it may, 5 to 7 days. And for the first 3 days, I sat on the toilet and threw up between my legs, and everything, all the poison, physically, spiritually, and mentally, ran out of me. Showers hurt. In 2007, it was 10 times that bad because I was 10 years older. I was 37 at the time, I believe. Yeah. And it was a lot tougher than, no, I was 47. I was 37 when I got clean the first time. I was 47 the time I got clean the second time. And it was a whole lot harder. Plus, I didn't have the maintenance drugs to help me get off it. When I got in the hospital, first of all, I lied to my family physician because I went to a different doctor to get the back medicine, which was a back injury. So I lied to my family physician that I didn't do anything. Well, I had to fess up to him. I did a 9th step with him before I even knew what the steps were. And thank God he stayed by my side because he helped me get clean the first time in 97. And so I told him, hey, Chris, I'm very sorry. And I apologized to him. And he said, okay, we're going to do this again. But they wouldn't give me any maintenance work. I had to go white knuckling, what they call white knuckling. And it was tough. I don't ever want to forget those days because if something, it helps me stay clean today.
You were born in the 70s, 60s.
Yeah,
60,
thank you. 60.
In 60.
Yeah, it's the last of my 50s right now. I'm 59.
Why do I always think you're younger? Tell me about the early partying days. Tell me about you growing up. Both your parents, very hardworking people, both great, beautiful, salt of the earth people. At age 12, you go to Echo Lanes, and we were talking about it earlier. This was like your first job. This is the one thing about my uncle is he's always been a worker. Ever since I've known you, you've been the Rolling Stone gathers no moss. I was in Florida 2 weeks ago. He's texting me, hey, I'm going to cut your grass for you, okay? It's like, yeah, okay, awesome. Always
true.
working and always looking to help somebody out. So you go to Echo Lanes at 12 and lead us to that. I mean, tell us a little bit about that history part of it.
That's 1972, and the biggest rules we had in our house was be home before the street lights come on, obey the police officer, don't disrespect the family. So, you could pretty much run the streets, not run the streets, but you were safe on the streets with a bicycle. And Echo Lanes was a mile or so away, so we rode our bikes up there. And a gentleman by the
Echo Lanes, for anybody that's not from the area, is a big bowling
alley.
Bowling alley.
Yeah.
I want to say bolo mat, like it was a laundromat. Big bowling alley, lots of fun. Echo Lanes on Elm Road and Warren.
Correct. So a buddy of mine worked there, and he was a year or two older than me, and I liked it. I liked bowling, and I enjoyed being there, and I liked the people. They were old, young people, and so I watched what he did. And he told me that he couldn't make it one day, and I went up there and just did his job. They didn't ask me or nothing. I just did his job. I was 12 years old at the time. Well, they said, I'm sorry, you're too young. But as I did the job, they loved me. So they told me to come back the next year. I was 13. I had to get special permission from my principal elementary school and my parents, and they didn't call it a GPA grade, just keep your grades up, no C's or D's. So I did that, and I made 75 cents an hour. Man, my first check was like $26 for 2 weeks. I mean, at 13, I still think my mom kept the money and I had to put it back. I had to show that I saved money, Yeah. But at 13, $26, actually in my name. I have Social Security statements that I paid in Social Security in 1973. And I've been working ever since.
What'd you go buy with the money? Do you remember? What was the first thing?
Oh, I couldn't. Probably spend it on a girl. If you really want to know. Because that was one thing that was prevalent there. Saturday morning junior leagues. Oh, my gosh. At 12, 13, and 14, you start waking up and, noticing the opposite sex. And it was so much fun. And then I worked there. I got my shirt that said Echo Lanes on it.
Hot shit.
Oh, man. Yeah, that was just a concourse boy. I was just working up in the front. I didn't even get in the pitch yet doing any mechanical work.
Was that, so we talked about this before we started the show. Echo Lanes, when I think of Echo Lanes, I obviously think about the bowling pins and the sound and the visceral sense of it, the sensory part of it. But the other thing I think of is that bar. There's a nice bar in that back. It's kind of dark. It's kind of,
Doesn't it have a catchy name too? Isn't it called like the 11th or 14th frame bar or something?
Actually, the original name was the Hawaiian Room.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a gentleman by the name of Dominic Masry, Mims.
Oh, yeah.
Huge. I mean, what a man. He was like my father when my father wasn't around. He took me in. I got to mention the Duke and Mimmer. Mims, Dominic Masry, and the Duke was Paul Yancy. And these guys were huge figures. Duke was the football coach for the Warrenlow Presidents, Warrenlow Eagles. And what a blast. I mean, these guys loved me. They let me go play their numbers for them. They let me run to the store for them. They trusted me. They took me in. They showed me a life that probably should have been shown to a 13, 14, 15-year-old young man. But they showed me, taught me how to grow up fast. Don't trust this. Be able to trust this. Be aware of your surroundings, which I tell my kids all the time. They showed me things about life that you would never learn in schools or books. I love those guys to this day. They're both gone, but what great gentlemen. And there was a lot. Ernie Shavers came into the bowling alley one time. We couldn't fit him. We couldn't find a ball to fit his hands. And these are the kind of people that hung around there because of Mims and Duke. Ernie Shavers coming. He put his fist in front of my little face. It covered my whole head. What a guy! Just
Ernie Shavers, heavyweight contender, fought Muhammad Ali, the hardest hitter in the heavyweight division.
Muhammad Ali said he never been hit any harder.
Braceville in Warren, Ohio.
Right, right. But this is the life I was. This was my environment, and alcohol was always prevalent.
Was that your first drink at the bowling alley?
No, actually, my first drink was my sister Angela got married in 1972. And, we found a little this, found a little that. I got that feeling, changed my whole personality, brought me right out of me.
How so? What changed about you when you had that first drink?
I was like on steroids, I had a lot of confidence, I was funny, I could make people laugh. When you make adults laugh at 12, 13, 14 years old, you are something. They want you around, they want your attention, and that's what I got.
That's the juice. You got the juice from the juice.
Yes.
You go to high school. You work. You're still working at Echo. You end up working at automatic vending.
Yeah.
You graduate.
I hope it's hard to use names, but the Payavlises owned automatic vending, Ohio Security.
Still do.
Yeah. And great. They give a little Italian boy a chance. And what great people. And they took me right from Echo Lanes when I graduated high school, or right before I graduated high school, right in the back in AVI, and we loaded trucks on midnight turn. Oh my gosh! It just treated me so good. They just treated me like family.
And at this point, you're going to school and you're probably partying and stuff. I mean, what is it? Problem there?
Yeah, let me just tell you about school, and it's a real big part of my using that really messed me up, and I had to do a sincere fourth step to forgive some of the people that I really wronged. There was I'm not going to use any names, but there was a high school football coach. I played football freshman year, and I never came off the field. I was about $147. I returned punts. I played offense. I played defense. The one coach that I will say is John Gillen was he took us under. Great guy. Coach Kennedy, great guy. But there was a varsity coach in between freshman and sophomore year that said, hey, Dave, give me a cigarette. I said, no, Coach, we can't smoke. And I'm still in the weight room. I'm doing weight. Before they did weights all year round, I loved the weight room, and I worked out, And he said, give me a cigarette. I said, nah, we don't smoke. Well, he knew I smoked, so I gave him a cigarette. Well, he grabbed them, and he took me into Coach Gene Nero, the head coach's office, and told him what I did. And I was not allowed to go to the banquet that year. I was the only football player in 1976 or 75 that was not allowed. And I had to tell my parents that. And I told my dad and the old Italian families that I disgraced the name. He was so disappointed in me. And I quit playing football. And from that time on, I had free time on my hands, and the using really took off. Well, instead of going to school, I went to school, but instead of studying in school, I majored in sales, let's say.
Okay.
The high school that I went to had a lot of money. And I started with 1 ounce of weed. And then back then, an ounce of weed was 28 grams. You could pay $35 for an ounce of weed, break it up 4 ways, get yours for free. Hey, let's do this again. So I did it with a quarter pound. Then I did it with a pound. And I'm 16, 17 years old. You buy a pound of weed for $360. You sell 3 quarter pounds, you're smoking for free. And this just took off, and I'm starting, and all this free time, and then I'm using, and that one incident that stopped me from playing football changed my whole life for the worse. And I don't think that and I still see the guy. I see him at the golf course all the time, and he never said much, he never apologized for it, but I had to do some serious step work to be able to forgive that guy and be at peace with it for myself. Because, the forgiveness is for me. for me to move on. And so and I direct result of the 12 steps. But it was a bad time in my life, a really bad time. And it continued through my teenage years. I was in 7 wrecks in 4 years and totaled 4 vehicles in the hospital, just using. I couldn't get enough.
Just booze and marijuana?
There wasn't a drug I didn't try. There was not a drug. In the 70s, 80s, and the drugs were cheap, love was free, and partying was a way of life. Alcohol, anything you can imagine. We made some stuff we didn't even know what the hell we were making.
Do you think, because you mentioned marijuana, weed, people talk about that being the gateway drug. Do you think that's a gateway drug?
No, it was me. I knew people.
Do you think there is a gateway drug?
For some people, it's the personality. Mm-hmm. For me, it was experimental. Crazy Dave. Dave will try anything. Dave, I wanted to be the life of the party.
Superman.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I got the scars to prove it. I don't know if there's a gateway drug or not. I think it's, it was me. I wanted to try it. I was always wanting to experiment.
You graduate in 78. In 79, up until 92, you're working at Brainerd Strapping.
Correct.
This area here in Northeast Ohio, I always say the greater Warren Youngstown area, Western Pennsylvania, we're known for our grit and our hard work. And there were factories manufacturing in auto and steel and offshoots of those factories, like a Brainerd Strapping, right? They're making strapping to ship stuff all over the world and whatnot. And you worked up until that plant closed in 92.
Actually, Brainerd Strapping was a division of Sharon Steel.
Oh, okay.
Sharon Steel owned Damascus Tube, Brainerd Strapping. There was another company. They had little satellite companies, but it was actually owned and operated by Sharon Steel. So we took Sharon Steel, not their best sheet metal, but we took their sub product and made strapping out of it. Well, I started in there in 1979 as a laborer, and within 6 months, I got a bid for a janitor for 10 cents an hour more. I had $500 in my pocket, clearing $500 every 2 weeks. I mean, at 19 years old, I worked in there till 92, but in 1989, they closed down and reopened, and I was offered a salary position as a foreman. And the only reason why is because I knew the mill. They changed some supervision around, and a gentleman came over from Sharon Steel by the name of Jim Hodge, and he was an engineer, but he didn't know the strapping business. And I was only 30. I was, let me think, 19 to, so I was in my 20s, 25, late 20s, and he asked me to be a supervisor. I ended up being general foreman for a year and a half. But only because I knew the mill. I loved that. I had responsibility, and I knew the mill, But I had worked my way up. But in 92, they pulled the plug. Sharon Steel finally went bankrupt, filed Chapter 7, Chapter 11, and closed everything.
Still partying pretty good at that point?
I was drinking before, during, and after work. If I didn't get a drink or something, my hands were shaking. At 7 o'clock in the morning, I'd stop the 83 Club and get a shot or two of vodka, just stop my hands from shaking. By noon, my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't get the coffee to my hands. I'd sneak out, get a drug of choice, and maybe a drink. When I was working turns, I'd go under the fence. I was the smallest guy. I'd go under the fence, get 2 shots, 2 beers, bring a 12-pack back, and we were all drinking. I was the only one, but we were all, back then, drinking was just, you worked hard, you drank hard. But I was only, I was in my early 20s, and my hands would shake so bad that I couldn't, I was having trouble functioning. I was already having DTs at that time.
At what year? So, I want to clear a couple of these, little hurdles or whatever in the timeline. Brainerd, and because we talk about purpose. Your purpose of your life. Someone said the other day, I'd posted something on the podcast Facebook page, and it was about suicide and how suicide is so prevalent now and so high, especially in Ohio. And so I asked a question on the page, and one of my friends responded and said, I said, what can we do about this? And his was a one-word answer, and it was jobs. And I responded as the broadcast back and said, maybe it's purpose, because sometimes we identify jobs as we identify purpose as what's our job. Our job is what we go to get pay or whatever. But that doesn't necessarily, just because you don't have a job sometimes doesn't mean you still have, those things are kind of separate in my, like your purpose now is to be a great father, a great husband, a great provider. I mean, and that's all our purposes here, right? And we also have ways we make money, which is also tied into kind of our purpose. But you had lost, not like they lost, like, oh, I lost my keys. Brainerd had shut down. You had went to work.
Denman Tire.
That had shut down. So you've experienced
RG Steel. 2 years.
And these things, I'm asking you, I guess I'm saying, they exacerbated the usage. Well, not the RG Steel part, because by that point you were already.
One of the hardest things that, being the.
Not that you're using it as an excuse either. I want to make that clear.
No, because I'm going to tell you success. I'm going to show you how successful it is just by getting off your butt and going and doing it. I'll give you encapsulate for you. So I go to work, Echo Lanes, leave there in 78, go to Automatic Vendors, leave there in 79, go to Brainerd Shopping, 79 to 92. They closed down. A good friend of mine who owned a paint business picked me up. I already had a child, 2 or 3 years old. I had no benefits, nothing. Couldn't find a job that I wanted or I could do because I only had barely a high school diploma, And so he picked me up. I worked for him for 92 to 94. Thank God Joey Angelo, friend of the family, was able to, my mom contacted him and said, hey, he knew the personnel director out at Denman Tire. I went to work at Denman Tire in 1994. They closed down in 2010. I went to Ajax. No, I'm sorry. I went down to RG Steel. The whole time I always worked inside a facility. I went down to my brother-in-law, Bill Masucci, lived across the street from a foreman that worked down at RG Steel, only it was for Harsco, which is a steel processing, scrap processing for these steel mills. Would they take all their scrap and process it? And it's all outside, heavy equipment. Well, the funny thing is, when I was in high school, Boutard, Bootsy, you remember? He was
Tony
a guidance
Boutard,
Yeah, he was a guidance coach. What do you want to do with your life? Well, when I was 12 or 13 years old, this gentleman, we were putting a septic tank in a little camp we had up in Pymatuming, and this guy let me jump up on his tractor, and he showed me how to pull 2 levers at one time with a backhoe. And from that day forward, I said, I want to operate heavy equipment. So now, here's how the God in my life works. Batar says, my junior year, what do you think you want to do with your life? I said, I would love to operate heavy equipment. He says, you don't have to go to college for that. You can go to a trade school. Well, I didn't have any inkling about school. I didn't want no part of school. I thought if I just worked, in that time you could come right out of school and go to work in the mills. So I said, I would love to operate equipment. He said, well, you become a heavy equipment operator, and then you can go to school and get in the Operating Engineers Union. I said, okay, yeah. But I blew it off. I never did. I never pursued that. I just wanted to work and make money. That's what I thought my purpose in life was. I blew it off. So I went from Denman Tire to RG Steel, and Tony Pagano, who lived across the street from Bill Masucci, Bill said, hey, my brother-in-law's out of work. He needs a job. Can you help him out? Tony Pagano worked for Harsco, which is a scrap processing. Well, don't you know it's all heavy equipment operations? He said, yeah, we're looking for somebody right now. But what I did, I started with a pressure washer cleaning cars at 50 years old. This is 2010. I'm 50. And so he said, yeah, come bring them. I'm cleaning their cars. Well, they got heavy equipment out there. He says, what do you think? You want to try it? I said, I've never, I can do it. Yeah, I can do it. I got right in that front end loader, and it was just like something kicked back from when I was a kid. I just got that feeling. And don't you know that place, I worked there for 2 years operating heavy equipment, and they closed down in 2012. So then I go to Ajax. I worked there for a year or so. Then I went to Ajax it was machine operations. I operated drill press and machine, but you're closed in a building again. All the hours you wanted to work, treated me good. I worked, as much as I wanted. But then they started with the mandatory thing, and you couldn't get out of there. I was working 7 days a week, 6. So
mandatory overtime is not mandatory drug testing. Because this time you're at this stage of your life, you've been clean now since 2007.
Right.
Maybe finding that purpose or rediscovering one of those purposes. Maybe it's just not one singular purpose, but
Well, I felt like I was such a letdown to especially my wife for so many years, and was such a letdown to my children that here we go. They're going to get everything they ever wanted or needed. And I went overboard. Of course, the excess, there it is. Nothing exceeds excess like excess. So I had to back off a little because, I'm starting to get a little older and I'm working like a fool anyhow. So I backed off, and I found a job, VEC, Valley Electric Consolidated, another construction company, but I'm doing environmental health and safety. And I'm carrying a briefcase, and
you go from an orange hat to a white hat.
Yeah, and I'm dressing real nice, and I'm traveling.
Corporate America.
Yeah, and and it just wasn't my thing. So the guys that were down at RG Steel went up to ArcelorMittal in Cleveland, and they got in with a company by the name of Stein. And they hired right out of the Operating Engineers Union, right out of the Local 18 out of Cleveland. They said, Dave, come on up. I said, I ain't driving no hour for work. Well, when I saw the figures, when I got into the Operating Engineers Union and saw the figures they were paying, this is the best job I've ever had in my life. I got knocked down and picked myself back up. Got knocked down by drugs, picked myself back up. I've lost more jobs than some people have ever had, but I keep picking through a God of my understanding, and I'm not a real religious person, but I got a God of my understanding in my life, has found. Now, I started at 12 years old. I wanted to be a heavy equipment operator. I'm 59 years old. I'm operating the biggest equipment I've ever operated in my life. Huge stuff. It's a blast.
That's awesome.
I'll go back in time. I want to go back in time a little bit because, you had all these, talk about getting knocked down. Your dad, just one of the greatest, so our, Dave's married to my mom's sister, and they'd have poker games and different card games and stuff at the house, my grandfather's house. And I used to love going over there, and I always wanted to play, but I was too young. They didn't want to take my money, thankfully.
And were they the same type as my family, where the kids were? Kids were not allowed at the table.
Well,
sitting at the table.
Kids were not. Yeah, I mean they were at night, so kids weren't really allowed at the table. But
'cause nowadays you're trying to play poker with adults, and they just bring their kid right next to you. And it's
yeah.
back in the day, it was like.
Yeah, this is not. I don't want to paint the wrong picture. This is not like a bunch of like smoking cigars, seedy kind of. This is a family. It's my grandfather's house,
right.
And yeah, you'd go down and say hi. I'd go around, shake everybody's hand. My uncle maybe would pass me a couple bucks. Okay, you got a date this weekend. Go. Here's a hamburger. That kind of thing. Get a hamburger.
Good hand.
And so we're a very close knit. I mean, as I'm sure as yours are, a lot of people listening, like. Just very close, and Christmases and stuff. And Dave's dad, Mark, I don't know, probably similar to why I always hit it off, with Uncle Dave before he was, I was in my aunt and uncle's wedding. I was in their wedding when I was 4 or 5 years old. I can still remember them leaving. I think it was at DVS Day Banquet Hall.
Yeah, it was 83. I think you were a little older than that.
Okay, so 83. I was
8,
7 or 8, depending on when were you married?
It'll be May 28th. It'll be 36 years.
Oh, I'm coming up
if
on
I make
10. You better
Nice.
You better make it. So I was 7, I guess, at the time. What a sissy ass I was.
No,
because I can remember them leaving at DVS Day Banquet Hall and crying, holding on to my aunt. Oh no,
Yeah.
They're like, we're coming back. You guys went to the Bahamas to Bermuda.
Yes.
Because I can remember the
Yes.
Bermuda Triangle.
Yes.
And anyways, very close family. And your dad was just such a great, warm-hearted, special guy. And I don't remember when it happened, what year it happened, but Dave's dad had a stroke. And
1988.
1988. So I would have been almost 12 years old. And that was he went from a very vibrant, great conversationalist, funny, warm guy. He still remained that way, but he could not communicate, and he never really could get around. And I can remember he was in a wheelchair the rest of his life. And I can remember them bringing him in because the poker games were in the basement, and they'd bring him in, and we'd carry him downstairs and put him in the chair. And you were really I'm not knocking your sisters or your brother, but you were to me. This is just my perspective, okay? You were a main care provider for your father, and that had to be difficult as hell because I know, how close you guys were, and that was, I think, a point. Again, my perspective, a breaking point for you where I started noticing, I can remember going over there. Now, of course, at that time, my first, drink is probably like other 12 or 13, you're sneaking it. And my mom got remarried. And when I was 13, I can remember being at Antone's and, sneaking some drinks. And, similar to the Echo Lane, I was working at Molica's Catering. And, when the weddings were over and we were done, we'd sneak a bottle of wine or, whatever the hell we could get our hands on, peach schnapps, and drink it in the parking lot.
Right.
Yeah. But, at 12 or 13, I start noticing, or 14 or whenever it was in that time frame, and these guys would have beers and stuff. My grandfather drank like Jenny Cream Ale and there'd be like some Beast Light, Milwaukee's Best and whatnot. And I could remember a glass of whiskey, like not just like a tumbler, filling it up. And, and I think, but I'm asking you, do you think that when your dad had that stroke and then, what year did he pass away?
Well, you brought back some real deep, dark problems. First of all, addiction is not the getting and using, finding ways and means to get more is a symptom of addiction. Addiction is a process of a thinking disease. We don't process. We don't want to process. We don't want to feel bad. So you use to escape or get away from. My father had a stroke. He retired. They retired him, let's say. He was probably retired, I'm going to guess, around a year. He only had like a year of retirement. And the biggest, darkest problem that really affected me is my children never really got to know my dad. And he was such a great gardener. He was just a good old boy from Pennsylvania, farmer, cuffed his jeans back, loved getting cow shit on his shoes and walking in the kitchen and just pissing my mother off, But and my dad, he partake in substances. He probably overindulged too, and that's one of the things I saw. But he was retired a year or less, and he had a stroke. It was about right before his birthday, September. He had a stroke, 1988, and it was a bad one. It took his speech. It took the right side of his body. He never really walked again. And my daughter was born, Jenna, and she was scared of him, and that affected me. And I didn't want to feel. I just didn't want to feel. Although with my mother's outstanding abilities, my brother, I have a brother and two sisters, and they all lived out of town. They all, they had their lives.
Right.
And I never, they did as much as they could do, and I understood. I never blamed them. I never got mad. I understood. This was my calling. I stayed home. And between me and my mother, we took care of my father. We never got him in a nursing home. We never, he stayed home with us. And God bless my mother. She's 91 now, and she's in a home to herself. But she took care of him just like the old vows. They took. But and I took care of my dad. But the strongest man in your life goes down. I mean, he can't do anything. He can't even wipe his own ass. That's how bad it got. I had to take care of that, and I just didn't want to feel, And so, my using was tremendous. I was working 2 jobs. I was buying everything I could buy off the streets. I was keeping 2 houses going. I was keeping my house going and a dope house going because I was doing $500 to $600 a week in dope. Not including what I was getting from the pharmacies. Back then, the pharmacies didn't keep tabs. So you could go 2, 3 different pharmacies. It was a dark, dark day in my life, and I couldn't get enough. No matter what I did, I just couldn't get enough. I couldn't clear my head. And so when I tried to take care of my dad, I had to get stoned before I went there, after I went there, during when I was there. I mean, you couldn't trust me with 50 cents to go across the street to get a piece of paper. I tried to put $1.50 together. My lowest lows, I didn't know. My lowest lows, and I'm going to share one bad story, and I'm not going to get too much deeper. I took the change out of my kid's bank to get gas, to get in my car, to get to the dope house, to get shit fronted to me. That's how low it took me. And even then, I didn't have a problem. You know, I was working 2 jobs, trying to keep 2 houses going. The dope house and mine, not doing a very good job at either one. I owed money everywhere. Couldn't make enough money. Did whatever I had to do to make money. If you invited me over your house and there was something in the medicine cabinet that you had that I needed, I'd take it. Just that way. And through the grace of God and the 12-step program and the 12 steps, I was able to work those 12 steps and do my amends and my forgiveness and make those amends. I mean, you got to do them in order. Damn it, I keep hitting that. You got to do them in order. And there's a process. But there is no reason for me to pick up a drug again. I heard a lady tell a story. And I always thought if I was to lose a loved one, worse than that, if I ever lose a child, it would be the reason for me to go back out. But I heard a story of a lady lost 2 children in 2 separate incidences. One was killed by a drunk driver, and her son was killed when he was drinking and driving. And she still didn't use. And I thought to myself, here's somebody that I have, I'm trying to give myself a reason to use, and she didn't. So what reason there's no reason in the world for me to ever pick up a drink or a drug again if I work those 12 steps. And I know I'm working the 12 steps when people that are in my life or people that are in my circle aren't using the 12 steps or aren't treating me the way I want to be treated, and I treat them back the way I want to be treat them. That's how I know I'm working the 12 steps. I owe my life to a 12-step program. It's taught me how to live again.
You mentioned at one point about when you first, thank you for sharing that too, because I know that's, I think it's important for...
That's part of that, taking that armor off and being vulnerable. And I've never done this outside of the rooms. I've told my story many times. I get a lot deeper. There's a lot of other stuff that's gone on. I don't want to go any further because this is public, and it's a little different than when you're inside of rooms with people that have done or gone through the same thing that you've gone through, because they can relate to you and help you. We share only our experience, strength, and hope. So if I say to you, and I go to your mom's funeral and I say, I know just what you're feeling, and I still have my mom, you're bullshit, because you don't know. Right. So we only share our experience, strength, and hope inside of rooms. Well, your listeners don't always have the same experience, strength, and hope. So if I said something that they wouldn't have any idea to, and then plus, you have family. It's another thing. I went, before I did this, and I got my family's permission to do this because I'm breaking their anonymity. Even though we haven't said exact names here, my family, the outside family, I'm talking about the Sunday dinner, they're going to learn things that they never knew about me before. So the next time I go to Sunday dinner, it's going to be a little different, because I made myself vulnerable. But I'm just going to say this. If I don't help one person a day, I'm really going to walk out of here higher than I've ever been off of drugs, because I'm going to help myself. So I'm here for selfless reasons. And maybe you touch that one person.
So that's the purpose, right. That's our purpose today. But and thank you for sharing this stuff, because that's, if somebody out there listening is struggling, and you can see the path that my uncle has gone on, the trials and tribulations, to use that cliche, and has come out on the other side of it. There's hope for everybody. But I want to go back on something that seems very, and Brandon and I had talked about this before, and you and I have, my uncle, I call him because, excuse me, I call him, we all have friends, close friends, or some family members that have struggled, and maybe you even struggled, yourself. I've never, having that purpose has helped me curb my own, what I would call problem drinking, going out and having too many and getting, a little bit too stupid. My wife, similar to you, I'm like you, I married up, and my wife has kind of kept me on track and given me purpose and knocked my head against the wall when I needed to. But some people don't have that. And the people that we love, there's somebody out there listening or not, and you know somebody that you love and you want them to be the best they can be, the best part of them. And so I call my uncle frequently. I've called him frequently in the past about some of my friends, some of my best friends, some whom thankfully are, most of whom are still with us, who have, some of whom have overdosed, some of whom are recovering, some of whom are trying to recover. And I'll pick his brain, and he's, shared these stories with me, some of which in the past, and always has been open to say, hey, when that person's ready, feel free to give them my number. But they've got to make that first, reach out. You've got to make that first step in being honest with yourself. And that's the thing I want to talk about, is in that you had said something earlier in your first relapse back in 2007 after you had gotten injured, and then you ended up on methadone, that you had stopped going to the meetings and stopped working those steps. And it was funny because I had a conversation with my dad yesterday, and he was sharing a story. My dad's the senator. My uncle calls him the senator because he looks like. He was sharing a story with me. One of his students. My dad's a flight instructor, and he was a little bummed because one of his students wasn't able to pass a particular test for, to advance into the progression. And his uncle had told him the most dangerous pilot out there is the guy that has 200 to 300 hours worth of flying. And I thought about that for a second. And he said, because that person thinks they know everything. And so you probably stop, and that's why I bring up my friends, I don't need to go to these meetings anymore. Like, what do you mean? I mean, and you're lying to yourself. That seems to be the common thread amongst anybody who is suffering with something, and they're using, whether it's, when we talked about this, whether it's food, whether it's sex, whether it's drugs, whether it's whatever that thing is that you're using, you're covering some kind of pain up or covering, and you're lying to yourself. And then as a byproduct, it seems like you're lying to everyone around you. And that's a hard thing to admit to anybody, to say like, oh, I lied, and I'm this is me, vulnerable, naked, and here's the truth. Here's the real truth, because it is that armor that we kind of put on. How difficult has it been to stay honest with yourself and stay clean and sober since 2007?
Let me get back to the relapse thing. In 97, I was hungry. I was hungry to stay clean. And the first thing I did was do meetings. And they suggest 90 meetings in 90 days. I tried as close to that as I could, but I did not succeed. But I did do a lot of meetings. And in that time, they highly suggested find somebody that's working a program that you think is working and honest. Because everybody in the rooms are not there for the same thing you are. There's a lot of people just trying to hook up, There's a lot of different stuff. A lot of people trying to sell dope. It's sad to say, but not everybody's there for the same reason. And so it's highly suggested. Now, this is suggested to me in the rehab. Find somebody that's working a program that you admire and want to work their program. So that's what part of sponsorship is. So you got to find a sponsor. And once I did that, he got me into service work, what's called service work. And within my first 4 or 5 years, I was the chairperson of a I don't quite know how to say it, but it's called Hospitals and Institutions, where you carry the message of the 12 steps. And I don't want to say the program that I'm working because with a disclaimer explaining everything. But I carried meetings inside of Trumbull County Jail, TCI. Now, I go to TCI. You got to do a 4-hour session before you go in there with the security, what to do, where to go in case of all the scenarios. But eventually, you get to speak with lifers. There are people in there with life. And I'll never forget this one gentleman came up to me, and he said, "I'm here forever." And he explained that he killed somebody. He said, "I'm here forever. What do I need this for?" And without hesitation, the God of my understanding put the words right in my mouth that I said, his name was Eli. And I said, "Eli, what happens when that kid that comes in here with 2 DUIs, 3 DUIs, has a chance to get out and says, I don't know what to do with myself. How do I get clean, or what do I do?" I said, "You got this program to offer him if you get yourself educated. You could pass this on to the kid that's got a chance." He looked at me like I spoke some real words of wisdom.
Because he did.
It wasn't me, though. You know what I mean? It was because I was so involved with the meetings, with the sponsorship, with sponsoring people, and I'll get back to that a little bit. But as with everything, I couldn't get enough. I wanted more and more and more. I don't want to say I burned myself out, but after 9.5 years, I said, it's time to back off. I was so involved with the 12-step program, I was disassociating with my family. For some of the reasons I got clean was to get the family, let's get back together. And we did. I mean, we had great time. But it's hard to find balance as a recovery. It's still hard to find balance. You might remove the dope, but you're going to pick something else up. Golf, food, whatever. You'll pick something up because you're going to replace it, because we're always looking for something. Part of addiction for me is I'm always looking for something outside of myself to feel better about myself, when all I really have to do is be myself. See, when you hit rock bottom, when I hit total rock bottom, I didn't know what I had until I almost lost everything. So now you're starting to get this stuff back, and I get more. And so I'm getting high on this H&I. I'm getting high on carrying the message, because that's our primary purpose. Once you get a little feeling, once you lose the desire to use drugs, primary purpose is to carry the message to the person who's still suffering. Like I told you before, the guy that walks through that meeting, or the girl that walks through that meeting, now that's another thing, is you separate yourself. It's men working with men, women working with women, and for obvious reasons, because things start coming alive when you put the dope down, okay? So, and that's the number one reason, one of the number one reasons people go back out is because of relationships. So, but anyhow, I was getting myself burned out. I was working and I was carrying the message, and I was working. And so I said, let me just back off of this thing. Let me just back off. Well, Dave's cured. No, I don't need meetings. Well, there is no cure. You're always going to be an addictive person. So to try to find balance, and then some things happened to me, and then I quit calling a sponsor. I quit working with. I didn't one meeting a week. Then it was one meeting a month. Then it was maybe when I felt like it. Well, boom, the relapse has already started. There's the relapse, but I didn't recognize it. See, I didn't educate myself far enough. Next thing you know, I'm picking up and I'm using. Within 3 months, I was damn near dead again. It grew. Damn it.
You're in good company, because everyone's done that last couple of days.
Geez, I've hit it 3 or 4 times.
Good, and bend it back a little bit.
There you go.
Okay.
Bend it down.
My hands start going. I'm getting happy here. My hands are starting to go. But anyhow, so I forgot where my thought train. But anyhow,
You were talking about the steps, or you started digressing on your meetings.
Yes.
And you might have touched on this, maybe I didn't hear it, but was this before that surgery that you started taking your pills, that you started digressing on your meetings, or was this?
that is the original way I started using it. I started when I was very young, at 14. I had some major surgeries, and
Okay.
that's what really started. That's how I was introduced to narcotics. You know, narcotics don't kill pain. Now, this is me, okay? I'm not. We gave it all disclaimer.
Right.
For me, narcotics never kill pain. They just made me forget I had it.
Oh,
But once
okay.
they wear off,
You got your pain.
you got. So let me get something better. you
Right.
know. And then 2, 4, and then stronger and stronger. Well, I don't have physical pain anymore, but I got some spiritual and emotional pain. Mm-hmm. So then we go get. Hey, they took the physical pain. Well, they're taking the emotional pain, the spiritual pain. They're taking that away more. So that's how I started using.
Okay.
But so I backed off of meetings. Now, what it's like now, if I'd have known grandkids could make you feel as high as I feel now, I would have had grandkids 70s, 80s, and 90s. I saved a bunch of money. I have never gotten feelings like this I am in love, not lustful. I am in love with this new little grandbaby.
Oh.
Kids are beautiful. And, you know, I had so much fun with my kids in the last 10 years that I've ever had in my life. But this grandbaby, oh my God. Mm-hmm. So it's a balance. You try, and my wife always tells me, I don't have balance. As a person in recovery, I don't have patience. I don't have balance. It's all or nothing. I don't sleep or I sleep. I don't eat or I eat. You know, there's hard to balance. And so in this last 12 years clean, I'm older. I'm able to sit back a little bit, but I am enjoying life. I'll never forget when I came home from the rehab the first time in '97 after 21 days. I've had this big yellow maple tree in my front yard, and it was beautiful. It was that color yellow. And I said, Jerry, look at that tree, how beautiful that thing is. He said, Dave, it's been here since we've been here. But I never noticed it. So the light, things opened up for me, and now it's tenfold. I'm almost 60. Life has gone, right? I am so blessed with being able to find a better job, provide for my family the way I am, not be in debt. Jails, institutions, and death. That's all there is for the using
That's what
person.
you said. Yeah.
And I tasted 2 out of the 3. And I don't want to, and through the grace of God, he says to me that I have something to offer. So that's why I'm not dead. I had a very good friend, and I'm going to touch on this, very good friend we used every day together. His parents both passed away, and he was left almost $200,000. Within 18 months, he had no power. There was flies in his refrigerator, and he hung himself with a pair of jumper cables in his garage. Jails, institutions, and death. He was in my wedding. He was my best friend, one of my best friends. We did everything together. And he was almost blind. He had cataracts real bad, so he couldn't drive, and we were very codependent. He bought for me, I took for him, and we were almost like we were married. You know, he was such a great guy, but he got to that point where I was at. When you hit rock bottom, you don't know what you have until you almost lose it all. He lost it all, but he couldn't cope. Mm-hmm. He took a pair of jumper cables, wrapped around his neck, and hung himself. So, at my point, why you get so mad, and why? But then you think, why shouldn't I? Maybe that should be me. Why did he do it? Why did I show up? But then the God of your understanding comes to you and says, you got another purpose in life. You know, he's using me for something. Maybe it be this. Maybe just take care of them kids. Maybe just taking care of my wife.
I mean, I think so far, the story you're telling is going to touch so many. Like Jimmy, you spoke about it. Like, it's now at the point, I believe, there was once a time when I was in high school in 2003 below, where there was that majority of people that were like, doesn't affect me, I'm out. I literally anymore cannot find one person that it doesn't affect, addiction in some way does not affect somebody. And So don't think that you're not helping out somebody. This is definitely going to help out.
Well, I appreciate that.
And I know you spoke about this, and I just wanted to kind of touch on
Sure.
this because so you talked about in 2007 when you relapsed, you went to I think you had a surgery or whatnot, doctors were giving you pills. During that same year, and this is where it's so crazy, during that same year, I had my 4 wisdom teeth removed. Guess how many Vicodin that they gave me?
Can I guess?
Yeah.
You got a 30 count of 750 ES with 2 refills, or maybe
Close.
1 refill.
It was close. It was basically 3 pills a day for 30 days. So almost like 90 pills. I took them. I wanted to throw up the next day. And I knew that, my buddy just said, thankfully, well, I don't want to say thankfully, but he was going through a bad situation that I was looking at it. And I said, I'm going to try Tylenol first. So I took one of those pills, the other one, and I dumped the rest. If I would have, honest to God, after 3 days of taking Tylenol 3 times a day or whatever, I was done. They would have had me so hooked on these Vicodins, it would have been unbelievable.
Could have, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think that they've come a long way with
Yes.
nowadays, like, I think that they're only allowed to give 1 day's worth of medication, and then you have to go to pain clinics now and stuff. And but you talk about your 12 steps. May I continue a little bit too?
Yeah. Let me just interrupt you real quick.
Okay.
But don't lose your train of
Okay.
thought. But I don't want to lose mine. One of my favorite things to do was to go to little old ladies that would go to doctors because they were so scared of the medicine, but they were making money off it. Now, you imagine a Vicodin ES would sell from $4 to $6 a piece on the street. I had 2 little old ladies. I was buying their script. Well, then they figured out how successful much money they could make off it. They were going to 2 and 3 doctors. Now, that's what I'm talking about. I was buying everything I could buy off the street. Now, at times, I'm doing 10, 20, 30 of these pills a day. There was a time when I would do 6 ESs and 2 Somas. That's $40 every 4 hours around the clock.
Oh, wow.
Now, you figure that monetary.
Jeez.
I pissed away 2 Cadillacs in a house. But go ahead. I didn't want to. But that was the thing. See, these little old ladies would figure the same thing. Well, they had legitimate pain problems. Their legs were swelled up, and doctors would. And I'm not faulting the doctors. There's a lot of things. And I'm going to let the government take care of that.
Well,
That's not my purpose.
It is a systematic. I mean, this is a great segue to get into. So I'm glad you guys are talking about it because in 2017,
Yes.
Ohio providers wrote 63.5 opioid prescriptions for every 100 people. That's almost 64% of the people in Ohio had gotten written an opioid prescription compared to the U.S. average of 58.7, which is still high.
Oh, yeah.
These are CDC numbers, by the way. And that represents a 38% decrease from the peak back in 2010. So it's gone down. We've started it to correct. But to your point, Brandon, you got written this script.
Right.
I was in 93 or 4, got my wisdom teeth out. And the reason I said those things, because I got a 30-day supply, I believe, of ES, 750 ES, okay, with a refill.
So 60 days worth of
I
multiple
took
pills.
all 30, got the refill. Oh, my teeth still hurt, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Or whatever the fuck,
You didn't have to make an excuse that said 1 refill. Just go refill it.
And so, but then I didn't need them for the pain, but guess what we did with it?
Oh, yeah.
We were partying with it, okay? Not knowing how fucking dangerous that was. But that was hopefully at that point, Gen Xers, like the end of that kind of culture, that party, work hard, we play hard. Like you kind of wore it like a badge of honor, right? We're going to party and, and this is probably why my uncle and I, get along so well. We're similar in a lot of ways. Like, oh, good time Charlie, guy that'll do anything, a lot of fun and stuff. And so, by the grace of God, whatever, either my makeup or because of certain purposes or certain redirects in my life, I didn't get that. Now, I had reconstructive surgery almost 8 years ago on my knee, and this is after I was 35. I had injured myself playing soccer. My grandfather on Sunday dinner, "What are you playing that soccer for? You're getting all banged up. You making any money?"
Wait a minute. I
Yeah.
got to say this.
Yeah.
You said when he was getting too old to catch your punches, you had to go
Oh, the
on
other
wrestling.
day. Yeah.
Grandma could have caught your
Oh,
punches.
shit. Here we go.
Okay,
Here
go
we
ahead.
go.
You know what? Let him finish. I'm sorry. I don't mean to take over the show, but we're going to lose
Wait,
his idea. Go ahead.
hold it. Let me
I
just
got it.
say
I got it wrote
You
down.
got it
All
written
right,
down.
all right.
At that point, it has become now in the zeitgeist of society that we're aware of it because we weren't. That's a $40 word.
Yeah.
I
can't spell it.
It had
God.
become prevalent, so prevalent that at 35, knowing that, I never got into like what people consider hard drugs. Cocaine, heroin, whatever, but, a little bit of booze, a little bit of reefer, a little bit of, these Viking NES when I was a kid. I got this knee surgery, and I said to the doctor, to the surgeon, he says, "We're going to write you a script for Percocet. You're going to get 30 days and blah, 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 blah." And I had said, "Do I really need to take that? Because I was scared at that point because I was obviously aware of what was happening in our society." And he said, you have any problems? You ever had any addiction problems? I said, "No, I haven't." He said, "We will monitor you, and you're going to need it because we're going to basically tear your knee apart and put it back together. And when you're done with the pills, when you feel like you're done, stop taking them, but stay ahead of the pain, right? And I think I took it like
hard balance.
It is a hard balance. And there's that thing again, that middle ground.
Because when you actually do have surgery, or if you are in a lot of pain, I've been in pain in surgery before. I've taken Vicodins. I've taken this kind of stuff, and I just feel decent. So they do work.
Well,
but it's like when, but they tell you
being
to keep
in
ahead of the
pain
pain
actually prohibits your healing because your blood pressure increases and your body
Right.
is working to fight the pain, not to heal your body.
So
this
it's
is what he told me. I mean,
So it's so scared to like keep that balance. But if you don't mind, I want to go into
go
that.
for it, yeah.
That
Go ahead.
12-step program. So that kind of really touches in my life and situation. I have a nephew that is, basically he knows no better. He's had the best life. Okay, he's about to turn 5. And but his parents went through a very hard time. And basically, I was help raising the kid and the family's raising and everything like that. But long story short, I don't want to go into too much of their detail, but after a few years, they separated, which they were water and oil. So they separated, and I saw, that the pain that I just wish that sometimes when you're addicted to things, if you could just see what your family is really going through, because you can't. And it's so hard, and I understand that. But, worrying, should I have a security system in my house? Where, my wife's crying every night, not knowing.
this is on your end because you don't trust the person.
Right.
Yeah.
Checking Facebook just to see if they logged in for the day, and then hourly.
Wondering if they're okay.
Yeah, wondering if they're okay, stuff like that. But I don't want to go into too much of that detail because people just understand that in a sense. But when I saw this 12-step program, I don't know a ton about it because I've never been addicted to anything, but I really do believe it. And it's like, it's one of those things where like God's in front of my eyes showing me like this 12-step program. With the dad, I was very angry at him. I was basically, I didn't know if this kid was calling me dad at times, whatever. He didn't know. And I saw him on the street one time, and I heard that he was getting clean. And he stopped me and he looked me dead in the face. He asked me, he said, "How you doing?" And I said, "I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right." And he goes, "I have a lot to tell you, okay? But I'm not ready yet. I'm not at that step." And I went home to my wife and I said, "You know what?" I said, "He had an opportunity. I'm right there. I was very kosher with him. I had a little, I was just whatever." And basically, he was right there, perfectly had opportunity. I was upset. And then come to find out he wasn't ready for the steps. And then he told me about 3 or 4 months ago that he was ready for the step. He sat me and my wife down and he really knew the situation. And he's, 2 years at this time He's been clean. About 6 months ago, he came out and everything, and he's in his son's life now. My thing to him is like, you know, I want him to have that kind of story that you have. I mean, I really believe into him. But if he was right here and he asked you, like, you know, how did you get from two to there? What are some of the things that maybe I can relate back to him and let him know that, like, you know, you're a champion, dude. I really do feel that you're a success story, but I want it to be your, you know, not yours directly, but is there any like things that I could look for that can maybe help him or tell him or anything like that? Like, what do you tell the person that really does believe in the guy in the 12-step program to like look for, or like, what can I do in a sense?
The hardest thing in working with a using addict or people that are trying to stay clean is you have no power over them. You don't have a magic wand. You can, and especially you don't have any experience with the 12 steps unless you educate yourself, which is nowadays is very easy. It's so easy to educate yourself because you just look at the websites, you know, you just type in any of the A programs, you know, and when I don't want to mention the names, but you're all familiar with them, but the first thing you have to do is change your people, places, and things. If you don't change your people, places, and things, if you're lucky, you will change your clean date. If you're not lucky, you're going to a funeral. The next thing you can see is physical. Loss of weight, loss of appetite. They're all signs. The using person normally doesn't eat. They're usually, and they might, now this is all about me. I'm not no guru, all right? I'm not, but if you don't have what you need, if you're back to using, if you don't have what you need, you are physically sick. It's flu, it's throwing up, it's diarrhea. You have physical symptoms, and you can tell a person's changed just by their physical appearance. The biggest thing is if you're around them a lot and they're happy and joyous and free, and they're working a program, you can tell their whole demeanor changes. So what you have to suggest is we have a disease, physically, spiritually, mentally, and incurable. There is no cure. It can, however, be arrested. So we have to take our medicine. We have to associate with people that are just like us. We have to talk and let our feelings out in meetings, because I can tell you guys about it, but unless you've been there at the depths that I've been, you don't understand.
Right.
The people inside the rooms understand because they can relate to me. Mm-hmm. So we always share our experience, strength, and hope. So if you don't have experience, strength, and hope, they're not going to share something that they don't understand what I'm talking about. There's always somebody inside the rooms that can relate to what I'm talking about. You would not relate to it because you haven't been there. But if you see those physical characteristics deteriorating, 9 times out of 10, they're back to using. He needs to, or she needs to, stay up on the meetings, stay vigilant with a sponsor, and I can't tell you how great of reward it is to carry the message. If somebody asks you to sponsor them, I have been asked to sponsor 3 people in my life. Unfortunately, 2 of them are dead, and I don't know where the 3rd one is. That's the sad reality of relapse or using. Go ahead.
And my last question to that is like, it's been 2 years now, and it's about 6 months, 8 months, and it almost seems like every time we're together, it just kind of comes up, and it's a great thing. Like, I'm like, dude, you're looking great. You know, like, if you ever need anything, let me know. Like, that kind of stuff. Is there a time frame where that might be negative? What I mean by that is like, you know, like, do you think, is it good right now that he's reminded that, like, dude, you're a champion. It's awesome. You're doing great, dude. If you need anything, like, is there going to become a point where he just wants to show up and watch TV and talk about the Indians? Like, you know,
if he's truly working steps, you know, he's at his 8th and 9th step. If he makes that amends with you, he first makes that list on the 8th step. He'll make that list of the people that he needs to make an amends to.
And he did.
And he makes that amends. He's on his 9th step. Now, the 10, 11, and 12 are the maintenance steps. That's what keeps us clean. You need to continue to work steps with a sponsor. Okay, that's somebody that helps you, guide you through the steps.
Okay.
And when you're done with 10, 11, and 12, you need to start again. And you will work steps the rest of your life. That's our antidote to using. That's our antidote to feeling, if I harm somebody, I make a direct amends right away. If I lie to you today and I'm feeling shitty about it now, I better make an amends tomorrow, because that way I don't have to use over it. Mm-hmm. But, with you not being a direct result of, or directly using the 12 steps, what you need to make sure is people, places, and things. You can see the backlash if he goes around.
Right.
If he's trying to hang out at a bar and drink Coke for an hour, 2 hours, shoot pool 2 hours, you hang out in a barber shop long enough, you're going to get a haircut.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, right.
So if you're trying to live that life again, but if you're in a table, and you're in the middle of the table, you're in good company. You start getting towards the edge of the table, you're going to fall off. I told you how I did it. Mm-hmm. I burned myself out, as usual. Balance is a key. It's hard. But if you see that lifestyle starting again where maybe he's riding motorcycles with the guys he used to party with, or maybe he's hanging around. Well, I don't want party with them, but I'm going to hang. They're my friend. Mm-hmm. Make no mistake. You get around the edge of that table. Whew,
right.
Got to stay in the middle. Keep yourself involved. Program.
I think it's interesting from that perspective, from the outside of it too, and having obviously you in my life and having these conversations about some of my best friends and people that we know that are some of them who are still surviving, some of them who have passed on. And you mentioned what are those signs? Like, even when you see those signs, like for me, that it's like that person's irritable. Or they're, I'm really tired. I'm sleeping. I didn't sleep. It's a litany of continual excuses, but never underestimate the power of denial, right? Mm-hmm. Because you want that person to be all they can be, and you want it to just be, oh, he didn't sleep well last night, or he's got the flu, or he's not really feeling, or she's not really feeling well, or whatever it is. And sometimes that's hard for the person on the outside to see too, like
right.
you were saying. But I want to ask this question. So someone's out there listening. If you're out there listening, anyone's listening, and you're struggling, what's the first step? Like, we don't want to use the term, addict but you're struggling. What's the first thing, what's the thing that sends you to reach out for help? Like, what is the first thing that person needs to do?
Okay, let me just explain to you what works in my life. When I get scared, fear turns to anger. Anger turns to resentments. Resentments turn to bad behaviors. Bad behaviors turns to using. So when I get that fear thing going on, I got to stop it right there.
In fear of what? Like,
just whatever it may be. I'm the best driver in the world. Somebody goes by me and I start getting mad. What am I afraid of? I'm afraid of this guy getting better than me, competition. First thing I do is calm myself back down. My best antidote, now that I know, is get on the phone and talk to somebody else. A sponsor, a grand sponsor, somebody that's in a program working the steps like I want to work the steps. That's for me. For the person that not in a program yet, first of all, you have to realize where you're at and what's going on. If you can't realize it, if I don't have a problem, if you're in that denial thing, if nothing changes, nothing changes. If you do want help, you've got to reach out and ask for help. If you're going to deny, you're going to die. That's all there is. I mean, if you're using and you think you're using successfully and you're missing time at work, you're not a responsible person. Your family doesn't want anything to do with you. Things are falling down around you. You're a using addict. You need to stop or you're going to die. Jails, institutions, and death. That's all there is. If you know deep down, if your whole life and thinking is centered in drugs or alcohol in one form or another, you got a problem. Deep down inside, I knew I had a problem. I told everybody I didn't. I didn't have nobody fooled except myself. You've got to realize it and face it yourself. You've got to take the first initial action yourself. You got to want to do it. It's like quitting anything. It's like quitting smoking. You know, if you don't want to, if you want to maybe you're never going to do it. You have to take the initial response yourself.
Well, so smoking, you brought that up. You know, people, and thank God we're like one of the last generations. Okay, one for you. Thank God we're one of the last generations for, you know, or not the last, but smoking is on the decrease. And so people want, you know, there's still guys that I know that smoke, you know, or girls. And so, you know, listening to people like, you have to set the date, right? That's like the first step to quit smoking is setting the date. If you don't know, what if you are that exception to the rule where you have, what the hell's going on? We got sirens going off over here.
I hear some beeping, yeah.
What if you are the exception to the rule? You have a good job, you go to work, you do all these things, and you still are using, like, there are those people that you may know yourself, but do people use that to fool, you know, are they using that to fool themselves? Well, I never miss work. I go to my kids' games, but you feel shitty or you know, whatever that thing is. How do those people get help?
Go to excess somewhere, some type of functions in their life is out of control, whether it be an anger issue, whether, you know, usually you're snapping or yelling at other people. There's something, if you're using to excess, there are functioning alcoholics, functioning drug addicts that, you know, I went to work every day. I had to stop and get something before I went to work so I could cope, or during work, you know, or after work. But somewhere, if you're to excess, eventually your health, something's going to go. Usually, you know, for somebody that's functioning, their health will deteriorate. You'll see them in a hospital sooner or later. We know ourselves. Nobody knows themselves like themselves. Nobody can take care of myself better than me. If I'm fooling me, I'm fooling nobody but me. If I know deep down inside something's wrong, it's time to take action. Why, who, what, where, when, and why? Do you want to take care of yourself? Do you want to take care of your family? You know, everybody has some type of family. If you're just in it for yourself and you don't want to be responsible for anything or anyone else, you know, you're going to, unfortunately, I've looked in so many coffins, young and old, because they just didn't care. You know, if you care about yourself, you know deep down inside, you have to take that initial response and ask for help. Today, there are so many programs available. There is so much money appropriated. Yeah, 211, that's an initial start. Just get on the phone and dial 211. They will guide you in the right direction.
Is that just in Trumbull County? Or
it's in you started in Trumbull County, I believe, and but it's in Mahoney County now. But they will direct you. There's so much money appropriated for rehabs, you know. But once again, you hear of all these people. Well, I've been in 3 rehabs. They didn't help. Well, why didn't they help? Because you got to take the responsibility. You remember, Leo Conley. He always talked in like the third person. You know, Leo did it.
Yeah, right.
It was Leo's fault. You got to take the initiative. You know, I can't stress that enough. Everybody wants to blame society. Here's a guy that lost more jobs and I keep getting a better one. Why? Because I went out and got it. I stayed clean. I got clean. Yeah, I screwed it up. I used again. I let my family up. Most of it I let myself down. But you got to pick yourself up. You got to take responsibility. I cannot stress that enough. So many times I hear, I can't get a job. Job's going to come to the house and knock on the door. They're not. You got to go get it. That comes from our parents. You know, that
right.
comes. I can't stress it enough. You know.
I want to reiterate, too, that 211, if you're in the greater Warren, Youngstown area and you're feeling, and I think this 211 could be.
I just called it just to check on it. I found some old cards because I was a part of it when it started. We were handing out cards and stuff. We would go to laundromats and post stuff. And that was my gig. Go to laundromats and post stuff for help. This is a couple of years, but I called it. I saw a card and I called it suicide prevention, drug and alcohol rehab. They're in Mahoney County now, but they were anywhere in our area.
If you're struggling, you can get some assistance and have someone to talk to if you have no one else to talk to. Fortunately, in my life, I've had my uncle to talk to, and I share this story. I shared this story. I don't know if I said this in the intro. I talked about there are people in your life that get put in your life at certain points in your life that change the trajectory or can potentially change the trajectory of your life. Some for the worse, hopefully for the good. And one particular story, I won't get too deep in it. All right, but I was, when I was dating a girl, and she was working a job, and her boss was trying to show her, I'll just be honest, he was trying to get in her pants, okay? And so, I'm going to take you out, and we're going to talk about work or whatever, and whatever happened. I don't know what happened. It doesn't really matter. But angry young man that I was. And I found out about this, and anyways, the short of the story was I was waiting for this guy and my girlfriend at the time to return to her car. And I was kind of like, I don't want to get too deep in it, but I was kind of camped out, and I was waiting, and I was ready to, Grandpa might not have been able to, he might have been able to catch my punches. Grandma might have too. This guy was gonna eat them. He was gonna eat some shit, and it might have been worse than that. But so here I am, at the backside of this building, close to this bar, and honest to God, I asked you this before. How did you end up there? Here comes this car, and this is like late at night, by the way. And here comes this car, and I'm probably 20 at the time. And here comes this car, and it's my Uncle Dave. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And I sheepishly tell him, with the scenario, because I'm embarrassed. And he says, "Hey, if you stay here, you're going to do something that is stupid and that will potentially alter your life. Mm-hmm. Get in the car, and you don't have to go home. I'll take you anywhere you want to go, and I'll listen to you, and we can talk. But you can't. If you stay here, your life is going to get worse. You're going to do something stupid." And I probably would have, because I'm a fucking idiot. But with age has come wisdom, so I'm less of an idiot now. But that was one of those points in my life where there's a couple times where I say, this person saved my life. Like, my uncle saved my life. I mean, I may have. I had a baseball bat with me, and I young lust and stupid thoughts and possessive thoughts and things of that nature. And you were there, like a guardian angel. And so,
I just want to, fear turns to anger, turns to resentments, turns to bad behavior. So we just stopped it after the fear, after the anger, instead of going to jail or being prosecuted for further things, because you were at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
You loved that girl.
Yep.
How could she do that to you?
Yep.
And so that's, and that was just experience, strength, and hope, because short of being in jail for the same type of thing, but somebody did it for me. Let me just say that. Somebody's done it for me, and you can only keep what you have by giving it away. And at that opportunity, we were able to give it away. And short of the time in the basement when you were 8 and I was, I think I'm 15 years older than you, the coolest uncle in the world.
Yeah, oh, yeah, for sure.
Involved a lighter and some fractulate.
Some flatulence.
Yeah. That was the coolest. That we were able to talk, not as a nephew and an uncle, but as a friend and a friend.
Yeah.
And that has been part of the God thing that I've been blessed with, is to be able to relate to younger gentlemen. Like I said in the program, it's men working with men and women working with women, and we'll intermingle, but in certain things. But men working with men, I can't tell you I get as much out of it as you did. that you were able, and we've been friends. We have such great talks over coffee.
Yeah.
It'd be a couple hours, and oh my gosh, we've already been there a couple hours. And I'm thinking we're just going to have a quick coffee. And it's just it's great, rewarding, and like I said, somebody did it for me. So,
well, we hope today, listen to the podcast, that we're able collectively as a group here, that someone has that same angel on their shoulder by listening to your story and listening to this, because and thank you for that time, both with the flatulence and the lighter at 8, and then also, when I was 20 years old and wanting to do some stupid things.
Yeah, that was
and that's the one thing I always say, because I'd talk to some people, who you can have on the show next, and I had mentioned, and they're like, oh man, that could be tough, man. That's a touchy feeling. When I said, for sure, I said, but you know what? The one thing about my uncle, he's gone through some real trials, but he's always been, had faith. He's always been a hard worker, and he's always been there with a helping hand, whether it's cutting my grass while you're in Florida.
And you didn't pick up the sticks before you left.
Yeah, gave me shit about that. Or, coming on today and sharing your story with our listeners, who are also hopefully, for those of hopefully everyone's listening and they're not struggling, but for those who are and they're trying to get clean, this is a guy that did it. I know it's a constant thing with you.
Every day.
I know that, and for all those people that you have given back to, thank you for that. And there's some gratitude, just like you had said, in kind of sharing it and giving it away so that you can help whoever that is, that next generation, or it could be somebody older, but you're able to share your story to help. And so I'm so appreciative that you've come on today and talked about your purpose and about how you've stayed clean in your life now, and being able to maintain, maintain the process over the past 10 years and really since 96, when you first started. Any words of advice, parting advice, any information or websites that we can give to those people who may be struggling and they want to get help, and they're either not from this area or are? How can they reach out so that they can find their own recovery and stay that course?
If you're sick of that lifestyle and there's no good that comes of it, the actual using, being on the streets, even the successful addict, you think, that's doing life on life's terms, but using drugs or alcohol, if you know you have a problem, there's no excuse not to, but you have to take the first initiative. There are so many problems or programs that are available to us now. Any.org, any of the A meetings has a .org. Go there. Get to a meeting. Go to one meeting. You don't have to say a word. We suggest if you're using that day, don't say anything. Talk to some members afterwards. Don't be afraid to get help. Take that initiative first. I can't stress enough, you have to be responsible for yourself. You will not find a person in this world that's working an honest program that won't help you honestly, because it was given to them freely. If you want help, now there's so much help out there. I can't make it any easier for you. It's the hardest, toughest thing you're ever going to have to do. Smoking cigarettes was one of the hardest one of the hardest drugs I ever had to quit. The addiction thing, I can't explain it to you until you've actually gotten free from being addicted to losing that desire to use. But it's out there. There's help. All you have to do is 211. There's rehabs all over the world now. Meetings are all over the world, not just in this area. It's worldwide. If you want to get clean, it's going to be one of the hardest things you ever have to do in your life, but it's out there. Just take the first initiative. Be responsible. If you don't want to do it for yourself, do it for somebody you love.
Thanks for coming on today and being honest and open and bearing
Absolutely.
some of yourself. I had a great time talking. Not to like it was like a great time, like we were at a party.
I can get dressed now.
Yeah.
I got naked
You
for
got
you.
naked, took the arm around.
I can get dressed for
And
you.
you know this man loves you. Look what he's wearing.
Yeah, he's got the original Two Ticks and the Dog shirt on. We were talking about that when he first
That's
came
the
in.
old school logo.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, prodders out there, be honest, be open, take the first step if you need help. Thank you for listening. Unc, thank you for coming on and sharing your story. It's so appreciative. I love you. Maybe we can do this again.
It always amazes me for somebody to ask me to speak at a meeting or for somebody to trust my recovery enough because, there's that person out there that's still using, that's listening to me and say, that guy's full of shit. Or that guy's got an idea. He's staying clean. He's almost 60 years old and he's clean. So it always amazes me. And I want to say thank you for having me. I'm so appreciative because for me to be able to give this away, I get a feeling that I've never gotten from drugs. But thank you very much. What you're doing, what you guys are doing here is amazing. Man. I'm so shocked at how well you are like an interviewer and how well you bring it out in people. Because I start babbling and get lost a little bit, and you brought me back in. So thanks a lot. I appreciate both of you.
We're just
I appreciate it. We're
professional bullshitters.
Yeah. Well, he said he was an actor.
Yeah.
I saw some tears.
Actor?
I said,
Actor?
I saw some tears over there, and that wasn't acting.
No, this has been a great episode. And, us as prodders and like every human being on the planet, we're all works in progress. So let's keep working at it, people. Until the next time, stay electrified. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate you. Love you.
Love you, man. Take care of you. Nobody can do it better.
Ladies and gentlemen, listeners, lovers, and friends, I hope and pray that something you heard today in today's podcast inspires you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe in a week from now or a month from now, you'll go back and you'll listen. Something that Dave touched on or that we talked about inspires you, if you are struggling with something, to seek help. Every single one of us, there's trials and tribulations in life. I don't want to talk about my own personal stuff. Maybe that's another episode. But everyone has challenges, and sometimes we need help. And it does not make you a weaker person to reach out and try to get some help from someone, a family member, a friend, a hotline, a hospital, a counselor, etc. Like if you're listening to this, please, you need some help, please seek it. That does not mean you are weak. That actually, it's the reverse. It takes a strong person sometimes to seek help. So I hope you guys got some great insight today. I want to thank Dave again for being a part of the podcast. The 13th episode got a little serious, but we definitely feel like it will be worth it in the long run, because if this episode helps one person, it was worth it. Again, I'm going to close with no sponsors today. I will say this. If you've liked what you've heard today or in any other episodes, first off, if you liked what you heard today and you want to hear more, please visit theprodcast.net. Find us on Spotify. Find us on iTunes. Find us on Podcaster. Subscribe. We are here to present and give you information that we hope inspires you, that we hope helps you, that you get entertained by, that you get some information by or some insight by. And we want to continue to do this, but we need your help in order to do that. Share us on social media. Share the subscriptions, share your links to the podcast on iTunes or your podcast app, whatever it may be. Email people, text them, the links. If this episode inspired you or there's someone out there, send this to them. We really want to provide inspiration, information, and education for our prodders out there listening in the podcast universe. We are super appreciative of everybody who has tuned in today and previously and in the future. We're growing. We hope we're doing a good job. We hope you're being entertained and you're being educated and you're being touched. You're being inspired by our guests. I've been inspired by every single person that we've interviewed thus far up to this point. That's why we decided to do this, and that's why we hope to continue to do it. But we need your help because we need to grow our audience, and in doing so, that helps us continue to motivate us to have purpose to do it, but also, continue on with sponsorships. But the only way we can do that is by continuing to grow our audience, grow our subscriptions, and grow our monthly downloads. And that I don't want to put the responsibility on you listeners out there, but we'd appreciate your help. So we really appreciate you listening today. I probably said appreciate 50 times, but 50 times probably isn't even enough. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. And we hope you continue to listen and you continue to learn and you continue to be inspired. Until the next time, stay electrified, people, and keep on prodding.